let's head on over and take a little bit of movie news.
What?
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 All right, we are gonna jump right into this. I don't know if you heard about this, but Sean Connery turns 90 this year. Sean Connery, James Bond himself, turning 90. This article comes to us from Variety, and in this particular article, they're talking about why Sean Connery was the greatest James Bond of them all. I'm not entirely sure how Sean Connery turning 90 is correlated to him being the greatest James Bond of all time, but let's while we're here, let's sit down and chit chat about it. The article goes on, it's talking about how influential Sean Connery was as James Bond and how he set the tone in the mood for the films to come. Of course, this particular movie poster for Goldfinger is saying that James Bond is back, breaking all-time box office records. And that is true. That is very true. What Sean Connery was able to do with the role of James Bond was truly revolutionary. I guess you could say, certain roles, certain characters within film had become very popular up until that time. 1962, of course, was when Sean Connery made his debut as James Bond in the film Dr. No. But, there weren't that many icons in cinema. There were a few, I would say Rhett Butler, Scarlett O'Hara from Gone with the Wind, pretty much the entire cast from The Wizard of Oz. There were a few roles, there were a few actors whose characters had gone on to become various icons throughout cinema. But James Bond, I would argue, Sean Connery as James Bond was one of those roles that kind of changed everything. Dr. No, the film Dr. No reinvented what a spy film was. It kind of invented the thriller genre, and a lot of that was due to Sean Connery's charisma, because up until this point, nobody had really heard of Sean Connery. His biggest role to date was Darby O'Gill in The Little People, put out by Disney. He was a small-time actor. Nobody knew who he was, and Cubby Broccoli and why am I thinking of his name? His business partner. His name is escaping me at the moment. They took a real big chance on an unknown. Stuff like that. I mean, yeah, it happened in Hollywood, but they wanted this to be like a really solid movie, and they needed a really solid actor to play James Bond. And, they took a big chance casting an unknown. And even Ian Fleming himself was not sold on Sean Connery playing James Bond. Ian Fleming was not okay with it. Anyway, Sean Connery as James Bond did become an icon, and it paved the way for other icons, for other genre of film to kind of rise to the level and be like the big pop culture phenomenon. Star Wars was, I would dare say, the biggest pop culture phenomenon until the Avengers. We have these landmarks throughout cinema that we can kind of point to and say, James Bond did this. Twilight Zone did this. Even though it was a film, it was a television show. But there are various cultural icons throughout pop culture that we can point to and say, this person did this project did that, yada, 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 yada. Seinfeld, yada, yada, yada. Like, there are very specific things. So Sean Connery as James Bond, was he the best? Before I give you my 2 cents, and trust me, I will give you my 2 cents, jump down to the comment section below and let me know if you think that Sean Connery as James Bond is your favorite James Bond. I'm very interested to know. I want to hear what your thoughts are. Just to list them in chronological order, we had Sean Connery, then we had George Lazenby, then we went back to Sean Connery for one film, and Diamonds Are Forever, and then we went Roger Moore, and then Timothy Dalton, and then Pierce Brosnan, and now we have, of course, Daniel Craig. It is my personal opinion. Film is subjective, obviously. It is my personal opinion that Daniel Craig is the best James Bond that we've had so far. But Mike, you just explained Sean Connery did all this stuff and he paved the way. Yes, I mean his charisma most definitely lent itself to so much in the creation of the character. But a lot of the choices that Sean Connery made as an actor were large and apart from the director. And if I was a better show host, I would have had this pulled up already. Here we go. Sean Connery in the movie Dr. No. It was directed by Terrence Young. Terrence Young was, I would say, even more influential in creating the on-screen persona of James Bond than Sean Connery was. The most influential person, period, was the author of the books, Ian Fleming. He created the character. He was James Bond. In his mind, he wanted to be this super sexy spy. He wanted to be the one to go out and, save the day and get the girl. Like, that is who Ian Fleming wanted to be. When he sold the rights to the production company, All or Nothing, AON, All or Nothing. When he sold the movie rights to Aeon Productions with, Cubby Broccoli, and they hired Terrence Young, and they hired Sean Connery subsequently, he, Ian Fleming, was not entirely sold on Sean Connery being James Bond. He didn't play the role the same way that he had imagined in his mind. He didn't play the role the same way that he had written in the books. And it's a shame. It really is a shame that Ian Fleming never got to live to see other incarnations of James Bond. He never even got to see George Lazenby play James Bond in 1969 in On Her Majesty's Secret Service. He never got to see he never even got to see Sean Connery come back. Unfortunately, there was a whole legal battle with another guy, Kevin Conroy. Kevin Can you imagine the voice of Batman in the animated series having beef with Ian Fleming? No. Kevin McClory. Kevin McClory had this. I'm not going to go into all the details, but there were some film rights regarding the movie Thunderball, and ultimately Kevin McClory won. All of that upheaval, all of that upset, is ultimately what led. All that stress is what led to Ian Fleming's death. After he was awarded, I think it was like a few weeks or a few months later, Ian Fleming died. And it was after that that the producers went ahead and made Thunderball with Kevin McClory, just to kind of appease him a little bit. We're getting way off topic. Before his death, Ian Fleming was ultimately won over by Sean Connery. And there is a huge argument to be made that Sean Connery is the best Bond. There is a huge argument to be made in that regard. I don't subscribe to that opinion. I feel like just because somebody creates a role doesn't mean that somebody else can't make that role better. I feel that, Sean Connery or Roger Moore, some people are Moore fans, some people are Connery fans, and both are fine, both are valid. And then, Timothy Dalton did some really cool things with James Bond. He made the role darker. He made Bond mean. It was the first time we'd actually seen like a mean Bond. Those films, they just came out at the wrong time, and, the Berlin Wall, and, the times are changing and everything. And it was just like the Bond that they were making could not be sustained. That's why they went to Pierce Brosnan. Pierce Brosnan kind of brought it back to a lighthearted, but contemporary Bond for the 90s. And then, the blonde Bond, Daniel Craig, I feel that he's the best portrayal. Now, a few shows ago, I went on this whole rant about Spectre and how much I hate the film, and I'm not really looking forward to No Time to Die. Obviously, I'm going to see it. I'm looking forward to see it. I wouldn't say I'm excited to see it, but I am looking forward to seeing it. But his portrayal as James Bond, I feel, is the best. Except for Spectre, because He totally phoned it in. He was tired. He was exhausted. But whatever. Daniel Craig brings to the role the energy, the charisma, the reality, the hardness, the brutality, some of the compassion. But then again, in the books, like, Bond didn't really have that much compassion. Anyway, let's go back to the article just for a second. We're not going to sit here and read through the whole thing. Let me pull it up here for you. But Sean Connery as James Bond, they make this argument that he paved the way. That if it wasn't for Sean Connery playing James Bond, yeah, right here. Sean Connery feted last night by UA at the Directors Guild screening of Dr. No, plus a feed at Chasen's, one of the producers on the film, was only a couple of years ago. Hitching rides in Hollywood Boulevard, that's showbiz. He returns to England with his wife, Diane, and their newborn after the Canaster starts another Ian Fleming film from Russia with Love. Yeah. So I mean, they go on to pour over Sean Connery and say, he did this and all. It's true. It's true. All of that is true. If it weren't for Sean Connery playing James Bond, a lot of this, a lot of what has to come would not be. It is my personal opinion. He created a great role, but other people have improved upon it. Some people have not improved upon it. Anyway, all film is subjective. I personally think that Daniel Craig is a better Bond than Sean Connery. What do you guys think? Jump on down to the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. Cool.